the potential for parental choice. Now, if our parents overwhelmingly wish us to remain as a middle school, then surely within your criteria for the admissions arrangements for the schools around us, you need to ensure that they have an intake which allows us to remain as a middle school and not exclude our pupils from going on to Manshead, which was the school of their choice. Now, I wrote to you about that 10 days ago or so, and I haven't yet had a response. Do you want to respond now? I've been accused in the past of being passionate about education in this town. I bloody am. I can't do any in this system anymore. They're finished. They've gone. They've been through it. They've done brilliantly. Okay? But unless we, as parents, are passionate, and teachers and head teachers are passionate about and governors, about the schools that we represent, why are we here?
Okay, I'm going to let the panel answer one or two of those points that were made, and then I've got a lady up there who did put her hand up if she still wants to speak, and then I've got a gentleman over here who wants a second bite of the cherry, and a gentleman over there. Okay.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to try and do justice to all of the questions. Last one first. As you know, I've come to visit Streetfield with you before Christmas, wasn't it? And others in the room. If you have emailed me 10 days ago, if I've received it, I would have actioned it. If I haven't, I apologise. There must be a very good reason.
I sent a letter deliberately.
Right. Well, as you know, I'm open to talking to you and have no reason not to respond to you. So I hope you won't, in suggesting that my lack of response might be some Machiavellian plot to not liaise with Streetfield, because you know to date that's not at all what's been happening, as you can remember from our visit when I came to your school before Christmas. Part of this for me is, or what I do at moments like this, is remind myself about the roots of all of this. And I keep coming back to collaboration and partnership, or perhaps the lack of it. And then I ask myself, well, why has that come about when I compare other areas, other learning communities, as we have a distinct one in Leighton Buzzard, Leighton Linslade? What's been going on in Dunstable? And then people remind me when I share those thoughts with them, well, Mark, this has been going on for years and years. Longer than the 2 years I've been in this job, longer than the 4 years Central Bedfordshire Council has been created, for decades. In fact, even Friday, someone suggested to me that 3 tiers were created in the 1970s, and ever since, for the last 40 years, there has been argument, division, and a difference of opinion as to what should be done next, ever since the day it was switched on. And for me, although we may not agree on the answer, we can at least agree that there is an answer being put to you. And I'm sorry that you may not feel that it's one that you agree with, but it is a view that is held by many people. But collaboration and the ability to partner and work with other human beings who represent the best interests of the kids and children in their school is essential. Surely it's essential, as well as the quality of teaching and learning in the classroom. And I say this as a parent, not just as a politician representing your views and others at the council. So I hope you will reflect on that view, as well as the views that I expressed to you when I came to visit with you at Streetfield Middle School. I'll ask Rob to respond to the Houghton Regis Academy question, because I believe there has been a consultation and parents were engaged in that. But I'll allow Rob, one of the officers, to reply to that more thoroughly. And again, just one final point, I may have mentioned it earlier, but the reason I think we're here tonight, why so many of us are passionate about education, is because we felt that the status quo was not acceptable. Certainly when I came into office 2 years ago, the status quo was not acceptable. There was a consensus amongst politicians, amongst teachers, amongst governors and parents that, okay, Central Bedfordshire needs to do something different. Our statistical neighbours, we were 11 out of 11. We were bottom of those local authorities that looked like Bedfordshire in terms of its demography and socio-economic makeup. Bottom, year after year. were below the national average, year after year. Some say for decades, but I've never looked back that far. Something had to be done, and hopefully there's an agreement in terms of our common level of understanding here tonight, when we leave here tonight. Something had to be done. So my choices were, do a Suffolk and shut all the middles, whether you're good or bad, and I thought that was the wrong thing to do. I've been to some very good middle schools, and I congratulate them on their continued success. Or the alternative, given the legal and financial constraints, given the absence of levers that I no longer have. I think Des Tinch mentioned a point about why isn't the council fixing this? Why is there an absence of leadership, or where's the effect? Well, that's partly the answer, because there are those levers, those legal and financial powers and abilities do not exist anymore. And that's the new world in which we are living in. So my second option is to allow local solutions to emerge, and then for this authority and others to help those schools as best we can, given we cannot force people to talk to each other, to come together, to collaborate and partner. And there's an open invitation which I've made to many of the, well, to all of the schools that I've visited in this area, for the local authority to broker, to facilitate, not by one of our staff or myself, but by a third party. We have funds and people who can obtain third-party facilitators, the retired head, as Andrew mentioned a while ago. That is an open invitation and has been for the last 2 years since I've been in office. But you cannot force people to get in a room together and agree a solution. And where there are differences, we have to do, I'm mindful of how much I can say, but we have to do what we can to make the best of that situation. Always reminding ourselves, as I do every day, particularly when I take my children to school, that that's what it's all about. It's the child in the classroom, the teaching and the learning. How do you get that best result for them when they emerge from the system at 19 years old? Rob, could you comment on how we...
Okay, so just a quick response in terms of your question with regards to King's Houghton Middle, the former King's Houghton Middle that was sponsored through as an academy by Greenwood Trust, which is now Houghton Regis Academy. They have consulted, as I set out on my slide earlier, for one block of an 8-week period. And they've compiled all of the responses to that consultation back, and I think it's actually on their website. It's been submitted to the department, and I understand that a decision is expected back by the end of May. And the decision that will be made is whether they can retain their years, whether they can retain their bottom year through for a further year, and effectively nudge up into secondary school age range. I hope that makes some sense. But it's effectively at the end of May we're expecting a response back from DFE.
So will that age range be up to 18, 19 then?
No, eventually it will, and again this was covered within their consultation document. They're effectively growing a year at a time by retaining the children that they have currently, year by year. Yeah.
Okay, I've got 4 more speakers, and then I think we might have to wrap up there. So there's the lady there, yes you, gentleman there, yes you, gentleman there again, yes you, and the lady there, yes you. We'll take all 4, I think, and then if there's any points to come back on, we'll come back. So, the lady up, yeah, go on.
You're all harp on about how...
Can you just say who you are and where you're from?
My name's Becky Errington, my son's at Ashton St Peters. Now, you all harp on about you want the best for the children and everything else. Have you actually thought about their emotional well-being and everything else? So they go from a lower school, which is a small, tiny place, and then, you know, they stay there till they're 11, and then they go up to senior school, or whatever you want to call it. Now, that is a massive big dawn. But at least, when they go from lower school to middle school, they're prepared, and then they're prepared again for a bigger school, instead of one big change, which can scar them even more, that can scare them, and everything else.
Yes, you go next.
My name's David Williams. I've got a child at Street Hill. I had children at Manshead, and I had children at a lower school in this area. I just want to put it from my perspective, and then I've got a question. My eldest daughter went to a lower school in Dunstable, which wasn't good, it wasn't bad. She then went to Streetfield. She went to Streetfield as a quiet, withdrawn child who wasn't very confident. There's an excellent PE teacher here, there's an excellent headmistress, and there's an excellent deputy here. They built her confidence, she developed, she then moved on to Manted, and yeah, Manted was a good school. She did well at Manted, she got 3 A-levels, she went to university. Mr. Salou helped me sort out a problem when she first got into university. She's just got a 2-1 degree in history and politics. She's now the student union president. She's about to do another high-flying job for the university. That is what I call a joined-up education system, where whatever school you went to, they all work together in inputting. Now, my little boy, he's bright, he's a typical boy. Apparently he was in trouble today. He's doing very well at Streetfield. He was going to go to Manted. But how do my question is, you were saying about this 6 weeks consultation period when it goes out. How do I get my point of view? Because I'm not a parent at Manted. How do I affect anything? Is my end result is I don't send my child when he changes school in this area. I send him out of area to another school. How do I make that, how do I actually make an impact on the Manted decision from, he will stay at Streetfield till he's 13. If Manted go from 11, it'll affect the years he's at now. So he's going to be starting Manted 2 years after everyone else.
Okay.
And what about the sense side of things as well?
Sorry, I said I'd take the 4 questions and then answer at the end. So we've got a gentleman here and then a lady down.
Thank you for the second bite of the cherry. Councillor Sally is quite right in reality. 2-tier versus 3-tier is a bogus argument actually. But what we do know is from Suffolk, from Norfolk, from Northampton, from Milton Keynes, from the Isle of Wight, that the process of change from one to the other leads to a catastrophic failure for many of those schools. They end up in special measures. Their teachers, otherwise excellent, suddenly do not appear to be excellent anymore. That's one thing, for all adults we'll live with it, but the children. It takes 7 to 12 years to recover from that kind of change. And what's happening with us is not that anybody is being unpleasant or is being rude or what have you. It's that lots of little schools and large schools are making independent decisions which suit their needs but don't fit in to the wider need of the town. Now, I teach here, but I live here. My children too have gone through this system. It's about the whole town. Not the fact that one school at one part of it wants to do this. We've seen that Houghton Regis was very successful. You're quite right. They all went together. All of Leighton Buzzard went together. But unfortunately, in Dunstable, we didn't. Everybody retreated back to their own little office with their group of governors. What's best for me? How can I make sure my school is not closed down? And in 2015, when the game changes at the next general election and all the funding goes up in the air and no promises for any local schools, we'll all be at risk again. Councillor Stay said about Streetfield and Manshead and St Mary's Billings constituency. He's absolutely right. Geographically we are. But 85% of the pupil population and the parents belong to Councillor Peppercorn's constituency. Perhaps he should have the same. On the one hand, councillors want to say it's owing to us. On the other, Councillor Stay stands up and says, this is what I want. You can't have it both ways.
Councillors could be changed like MPs.
Good evening. My name's Denise Harvey. I'm head teacher at Brewers Hill. And I just felt on behalf of my colleague heads, many of whom are here this evening, that I ought to say something. Because throughout the evening, you've been given very much the impression that we don't speak to each other, that we don't know each other, and we don't even like each other. And I have to tell you, in my experience, nothing could be farther from the truth. In 2007, 4 weeks after I got my job, I was phoned by my then chair of governors to inform me that my school had been shortlisted for closure. And then it began. And we are still here. We are all still here as middle schools because, actually, as colleague heads, and colleague lower school heads, who we've always worked very closely with, and upper school heads, we have a good, communicative community. However, much as Mr. Tinch has alluded to, when faced with the decision, with what should we do, given no other option, and having had resources pulled away from us systematically, we had to, as head teachers, look to the people that we are serving. We have to look to the needs of our children and our own community. That is our responsibility. And so whenever, yes, we met round, we talked out the scenarios, we even, forgive me colleagues, looked at the possibilities of closing different schools under different scenarios. But in the end, I as a head teacher would never stand up and say, my school isn't worthy of remaining open. I would never say, my children can travel an extra 2 miles. I would never say, my children